Hello, everybody, and welcome to Documentation Not Included, a tech industry podcast presented by DNiStream, the live knowledge repository for software professionals. It's Thursday at 7 o'clock BST, and we are live on twitch.tv/DNiStream. I am Chris Seabock, and today I'm joined by a new guest. Oh, you know what? I forgot to ask how to pronounce your second name. I always ask guests before that.
It's Piegari.
Piegari.
Also Piegari. Apparently, either it's like that's the like Americanized version of Piegari. So
right. So I was going to say
I was
going to say Piegari, but good. Okay.
That's fine. I'm flexible.
So Nick Piegari. In fact, Nick, introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are and what you're here for.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Nick. I'm a video producer and motion graphics designer, and content marketer. I would say pivoting to software development. And part of that is that I am very much a hobbyist kind of person. I've spent a lot of time working with like Arduinos and Raspberry Pi and just coding on the side, making some pretty, interesting stuff, I would say, but not much experience professionally. And so like a big part of like what I'm doing on my stream is kind of live documenting my journey on trying to find like some unconventional path from where I am now to where I want to go, whilst not abandoning the skills I already have and putting them to use in some way. But I like software development probably more than I ever liked video for the most part. One notable exception may be live video. And it's a better market. Like I've done this kind of thing before, like on Knowledge series. And it was about making video for business. And it's like, it's never taken off as quickly as the stuff I've been doing on stream lately, and like the opportunities it's already given me. It's kind of mind blowing and a bit of a whirlwind. So
the people who've seen my development streams will know that my development streams are quite boring. I just code, and I code how it's supposed to be done. I write unit tests and integration tests, and I said I've just been saying this to Nick. I architect my code really neatly. I do everything I can to make everything as perfect as possible. But Nick's stream is very different, and Nick is a streamer. Nick knows how to keep people watching, That's the big difference. I'm not interesting. Nick's got all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's your channel, isn't it? NicksMadScience. Yep. He's got dogs involved with things like he's trained his dog. Can I tell people this, or do they have to come and watch the stream?
Totally.
So he's trained his dog
totally.
to, if you redeem channel points, in fact, you explain it. You'll explain it better than me.
Yeah, so it's like this is a project I've had in mind. I had the idea before I even got a dog. It was Mouse's. My dog Mouse, he's gunning for the rice I have on my desk. All right, be patient. All right, so the idea is I had these buttons on the other side of the room. There's a red one and a blue button. I can make them, actually, I think I can trigger them. Because this is an audio format thing, I can actually trigger it from here. I guess you can cut this part out of the podcast. It's a little boring.
Oh, we don't cut anything out of the podcast. That's the thing.
Oh, okay. In that case, so there's two buttons. One of them is you might be able to hear it in the background.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, what just happened there is I made a button beep with a channel point on my channel, and then Mouse will go boop that button with his nose, and at the same time, I have like a head-to-head competition between like usually developer-y things. I mean, yesterday was summer versus autumn because here in the Northern Hemisphere, it just became autumn.
Yep, same.
But I've done like tabs versus spaces is another one I've done. And I got that suggestion actually came from Bald Bearded Builder, like putting things head-to-head. So shout out to him, of course. And that's it. It's totally silly, but it's just a fun little stream gimmick that keeps people watching and entertained. And I actually work on the system that runs all this stuff on stream.
He gets a kibble. He gets some kibble as well, doesn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, that's part of it. It's not. Yeah, it's just regular old. It's just like I take his dinner portion and just whatever's left over at the end of the stream, he has it for dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind
Anyway,
of how that works.
so before we get too deep into it, our show out today. Today's show is entitled "Exposing Yourself." Nick, you are here to talk about how to get yourself out there. Now, you don't have, as far as I'm aware, at least anyway, you don't have much commercial experience in the developer world. You've done a little bit of work with people here and there, and we're going to talk about how to get yourself out there, how to expose yourself, how to make yourself known, because you've got this marketing experience as well. So let's start with the question. Let's get into the meat of the. Oh, you know what? No, let's not. We've forgotten because I was so engrossed in listening to your what's going on your stream. I forgot about the icebreaker. And if Josie's watching, she loves it, but she'll have my guts for garters. So our icebreaker: if you could choose only one thing, one of these things to play with for the rest of your life, would it be hardware or software?
Oh boy. I want to say software. Because I mean, a lot of the hardware I do design, like in a hobbyist capacity again, is basically, it stays pretty low. It stays pretty close to the software side of things. Like I remember when I was a kid, the first thing I ever real profession I name dropped as something I want to do is electrical engineer. But I love the hardware side of stuff, but I think mostly I like the hardware as a bridge between software and the real world. And I've heard that's kind of that can be a good hardware design philosophy anyway, because firmware updates and whatnot. So I'd say software.
So you'd say software. If you never had to touch hardware again, you'd much prefer to play with software than hardware. I
think so. Although I would, I got to say that hardware is what got me into software. My first big adventure in software was my Arduino, which was back in 2010 was $35 or something.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into it, was the interaction between the code and the world. So I always used to think it's just so limiting to write code that only affects a screen or your speakers or whatever. They're just that falls short of what's possible.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
I get you there. And there's one of our regular viewers, Tultepe. He works on controllers for ships, for massive tankers, and he talks about it, with so much passion. And he talks about, there's a few people that have various different types of jobs, but everything I've done has been screen based, pretty much. I've worked with some pump controllers for pumping fuel and things like that, but it's just turning things on and off. It's not that interesting. I've played around with my Raspberry Pi a little bit. I understand how to kind of work with those systems, but it's just never presented itself to me, really. Everything I do works and moves data from one place, translates it, and then moves it to another, and presents it in a particular way, and then gives people a user interface. I'd love to be able to work with hardware, but only with software. So my choice is software as well, because I know how powerful software is. I know what it can do. And I think the question I was really asking was, if you could work with software and never touch hardware again, or just work with hardware and somebody else deal with the software part of things, I think I'd still choose software.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, right. So let's get onto the show. Let's get onto the actual meat and potatoes. So as I said, we're talking about exposing ourselves. What is wrong? This is the first question I'm going to ask you tonight. What is wrong with applying for jobs in the traditional way, then, Nick?
For me, I got this advice straight from an experienced career coach, who's also going to be starting streaming lately, rather soon. And he says that and this could be totally wrong. It could be totally, I don't want to say wrong. That's a bit insulting, but I haven't tested it yet. But his thought was that because I have kind of an unconventional background, it might be hard to make it through all the filters, I suppose, because they're looking for X years of experience doing this, Y years of experience with this, bachelor's degree in computer science. And it's those hard-coded, get-it-coded requirements are might put me at a disadvantage. But one of the biggest advantages I personally have is that I love networking and making connections. It just kind of comes naturally to me. And so I'm pretty confident that that's probably my best bet. And it's just like I just grew that sort of organically over the years. Like there's this just to kind of give a quick summary of how that worked for me. It was some friends of mine are in a group called the Gamer Symphony Orchestra. There's actually a bunch of them now. They were the first. It's an orchestra that only plays video game music.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and so like I got in with that group of friends, and then one day one of the members on Facebook posted a link to an article by Amy Hoy of Stacking the Bricks that like really resonated with me, and so I started following her, and then I took her course, and that led me to Indie Hall, a co-working community in Philadelphia, which is online, and that led me to like this and that, and it kind of kept growing. Like I'm in a bunch of different Discords, that sort of thing. There was this really awesome video community.
You see, you've already jumped to what the last question I was probably going to ask. And it's a good thing, because that kind of proves that we're kind of on the same page here. The last question that I was going to ask in the entire podcast was, is it all just a form of networking? Because I do business networking, you know, and I don't just do business networking, but I also, Twitch for me is a form of networking. I don't get much work out of it. I mean, I've got a little bit, don't get me wrong, you know. I've got my name out there a little bit, you know, people know who I am. I get referrals occasionally, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't, but it's not about that.
Yep.
It's actually more, for me, the networking aspect is to keep me sane. It's to stop me going crazy, because I have always worked at home. I've always worked in, you know, solitary confinement type thing. I don't work in people's offices, really. It doesn't work for me. And the thing is that to me is the most important aspect of, or the most important part of exposing myself is I have only become successful in my later years. Yes, my experience helps, and my confidence in being able to sell myself to my clients and to potential, you know, people that I might want to work with in the future, or they might want to ask me for my services or whatever. But it's about people getting to know me, and it's about people seeing that there's a human behind the company name. You know, there's a person there. So yeah, you've jumped right ahead. So thank you very much, everybody, for the show.
Yep, nice to see you.
So you don't. Do you then, in that case, we'll lead on from that a little bit. Do you have things like a traditional CV? Do you give that to people if they approach you for work? Is it even something you would consider?
It's tough right now. Part of what I'm doing, and I think this probably very much on the topic, is I'm trying to go for I'm trying to kind of like build up the street cred in developer land, as it were. Like I just mostly wrapped this project for Twilio. Their Signal conference is happening in a week, and as they have this program called Twilio Champions, and that's like one of those, like, you know, become a champion of you know, our software, but also it's a community where people help each other out. And so somebody was like gracious enough to kind of take me under their wing and guide me through like how an actual development cycle works and the development process.
Yep.
And so for that contribution, they're going to nominate me for a Twilio champion, and excellent. Other things like that. Like Vonage has their Voyagers program, and Netlify has something like that, and so it's sort of like clout like that is a thing.
What's interesting is those three companies that you've named there, I never heard of them, not in any serious way anyway, until I started doing things in Twitch communities, until I started getting engaged with people like the live coders. I started speaking to various members and getting, you know, watching people on various live coder streams and having people on the show who are members of various Twitch developer communities. So, you know, those companies, they are very much out there networking in a very different way to the traditional software software companies or software platform companies. And it's interesting, because they're not really. I mean, I don't know them that well. I don't want to cast any aspersions. They're not really much different from another company, and it's just a different form of marketing. And it's interesting that they've got all kinds of people on there from really experienced, seasoned professionals all the way down to people who haven't, really worked in the industry before.
Yeah, I think it's no coincidence.
They give out those awards to keep you enticed and keep you going there. I'm not being negative about it, just that it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, and I think it's no coincidence that those companies have those companies have pretty good representation on Twitch, and that kind of gives me hope that despite my unconventional background, I guess. I mean, look at some of these streamers, like Chef Brent always comes to mind as like a very skilled video producer who started in software. So kind of the other way around from me. But I mean, the point is there's clearly a place in the market or whatever for people who have skills that I already have, but don't want to, but want to use them in a different market. If that kind of makes sense.
I sometimes wish, as a developer, as a consultant, I sometimes wish that I wasn't involved in the development in the development world, the professional developer world. I wish I was I was able to do more things like C# Fritz and Layla Codes it, the bigger streamers on not just the people who are out there advocating code, who are evangelists for particular frameworks or for particular companies. I would love to be that. But I could also never really assign myself to one company or one tech stack because everything's important. And I know a lot of these people don't. They use a lot of different things, and they're lucky that their employers allow that. But I wish I could do that, as my own employee and make, as self-employed and make enough money out of it to be able to live off it. It's wonderful that happens, and it's great that they're trying to get people. Again, they do what we try and do here, is we're trying to lower the barrier and get people involved in software development, and it's nice seeing that. And I do need to get more people like that on the show as well.
Yeah.
So, would you say then, in a way, you would consider yourself more of a disruptor or something that you're unconventional?
Yeah.
You know what? Let's take that question back. And actually, I'm going to ask you something else. I'm going to ask you, what do you want to do then? What is your ideal job?
I think something like developer evangelist would kind of be it. That said, I do agree with the caveat you just brought up. It's like, I don't know how hard I could evangelize just one thing, because I have a bit of an entrepreneurial independent streak as well. And so that would be a bit tough for me, but in an environment where it's part of the reason my personal brand is NicksMadScience is, I would call myself not like a disruptor so much as just an experimenter, someone who likes trying new, preferably interesting stuff, and just sharing my excitement out of working on that stuff with the world. And I think that might be a good segue to one of the things I wrote down in our notes about the pro tip I wrote down. For me, it's I spent so long working on this stuff in total isolation. I might make a video on YouTube every once in a while about some little thing I made, but it was always it's more work on top of work. And also, combined with a big part of the reason I'm pivoting away from video as a profession, other than that the market is kind of lame, is that I'm just burnt out on it. I spend a lot of time just making really boring stuff. People, I've heard oh, I should blog about this stuff. I should share it on Instagram or something. But everything was just more extra steps. It takes especially for someone with an ADHD-ish brain like mine, it's I don't know, and my point is one part of video that I always really enjoyed, my favorite part was making live video. because like there's that adrenaline rush. You have to stay on your toes. And so for me, and just because, being a experienced video producer means that I can kind of make an awesome little production. And so just building this stuff on stream and having the interaction with chat, for instance, and just kind of having a big old party, I think is a big part of what Twitch is about. So for me, I would say, like, for the purpose of getting yourself out there, see if you can find, just sharing your work, see if you can find a medium that you actually enjoy creating.
Yeah, and I need to have more fun. I have fun during the podcast, I think. I mean, we do talk about serious subjects, but especially when Josie's here, we have a lot of fun. We tend to have quite a lot of banter, and if we've got particularly good guests on, we have a good laugh. But on the actual dev stream, for me, because I develop not all the time during the day, but most of the time, most of my work is development. When I get onto the actual streaming side of things, it's about the only time that I can really clean up my side projects and do the boring maintenance work that I need to do and upgrade the security features and convert. At the moment, I'm converting something from JavaScript to TypeScript. Brilliant. Everybody wants to watch that, but nobody does, and that's the problem I've got, is that my time is limited, and I need to do what a lot of other streamers do, and I need to have stuff going on the screen, and I need to get the bot interacting with chat so they can actually do something while I'm doing the boring stuff, because I'm never going to stop doing that, and I can't help it, Although at some point I need to drop the proper architecture and unit tests and actually start writing some cool stuff and getting it interacting with my Raspberry Pis and get it turning my lights on and off, and all kinds of staff things that you can do with these things, and we'll get there. But yeah, I think
fun.
Yeah, I think, as you said, the making it effortless as well is important, isn't it? Making it something that you enjoy. Luckily, I enjoy coding, and I enjoy doing the boring stuff. But I also wish I could just let go of that and enjoy hacking and just making it work and not looking at it and going, this is an absolute mess and it needs rewriting. Not everyone loves that, though.
Yeah, that could be. I think for me as well, it's like I tend to lean a bit more towards like extroversion these days, and so the social aspect, like very close to real time aspect of streaming on Twitch, is a lot of fun for me, because like a lot of the times I'm like, and I don't mean to date this episode, but in this era of perpetual lockdown, it's like I like having people around when I do stuff, because sitting and writing code or doing whatever can just feel kind of lonely. So
it can.
Yeah.
And I think I enjoy my own company, but at the same time, I get that. But for me, it's engagement, and I said that we try and keep the focus on the exposing yourself thing. It's about us trying to make an impact at the same time as enjoying ourselves, at the same time as making it effortless, and at the same time as making it engaging as well for other people. I mean, we've only really talked about Twitch so far in the engagement thing. And is that your main strategy for
now? It is.
Yeah.
And of course, like, I don't want to say that like it's a requirement for things to be effortless, because obviously some things are just going to be work, and that's just how it is. But for Twitch, it's been a pretty cool strategy, because one of my favorite things about Twitch is raids. I love getting raided, and I love raiding people. And to that end, one of the biggest like things that happens with the interaction on my stream is that when somebody raids me, a bunch of stuff happens. I guess I'm not allowed to curse. So, like I have like my fog machine isn't on, but like strobe lights go off and like all of this stuff, and it's just like it's a party. That's the whole point of Twitch, I think, is that it's just a party that keeps on going.
Yeah.
And you got to keep the party on. And so that's been a way for me to like, and then sometimes what I'll do is I'll like drop my trailer, which is a bit too long, but it's this video I edited that like talks about my experience so far. And people have watched that and been like, oh, it's a bit long, but I totally get this channel now.
I really liked your
And
trailing. Yeah, it was a little bit long, but
thank you.
I didn't have a problem with it. It told me exactly what you. I wish I did that, because I don't really have
Yeah.
my stream doesn't really. It does have a thing. Our stream's about teaching others and trying to get other people to into the software industry and help them understand, like, for example, your mentor giving you advice on what the software delivery lifecycle is like and what how that works. That's what I do for a living, and I want to give. Unfortunately, it's boring, but I want to give that information to people, and we do that with the podcast quite well. But as the dev streams, it's difficult for me at least, on my own, to put something together that teaches people as concisely. You see, and your stream is, again, it's about cataloging and vlogging, I suppose, your journey on the way to development. So your end goal then is some kind of evangelist, and are you thinking?
I would say so.
Are you thinking?
Or
Go on.
like, like yourself, I do like the idea of being independent, like being a consultant. I like that as well. But again, like, I got burnt out on that as well, because like I think it's the same thing. Like, so much in the video land has become commoditized and just made a lot of the skills I built over the years have been made, in no small part obsolete by better tech. And it just wasn't going anywhere. So that's a big part of why I'm excited about this, because it's kind of working out so far. And it's also like, even just watching, I guess, the quote unquote boring stuff on somebody just sitting there working on their own little coding project, that can be, I don't know, that kind of stimulates my brain, for one. Like, even if it's, I will admit that like 80% of the live coding streams I go to, I have no idea what they're working on, but I don't really care, because it's just like, my brain feels somehow in sync with this person in some weird way.
I think,
and then sometimes they'll be like,
that happens to me as well. I mean, even though I know a fair amount and quite a wide, broad range, I go on streams, and I am someone who always likes to engage with a streamer. Always. If there was some guy I was watching a while ago who was DevOps focused, and he was working on his own proprietary system that was. I was watching it for a little bit, but then I started asking questions, and he engaged with me. But I don't tend to get that much. Not that often. I do with my regular viewers, but I don't get that much engagement. And driving that engagement is what's key, I think, here, because a lot of people will just sit and watch and learn and get and absorb things. But I think in order to make a bigger name for yourself, again, exposing yourself as we're trying to talk about here, I think driving that engagement with the other things, with the interaction, with the lights and the strobes and the pets and the animals on stream. I've got my guinea pigs on stream. I told you this before, I think. I've got a guinea pig cam, and I have lots of ideas for it, but I haven't been able to implement them yet, So it's still very static, but it will become more interesting, and hopefully that will engage more people.
That's funny. It's actually one of the things I wrote in the notes was, if you have a pet, bring them on stream. They're no pun intended catnip for like for people watching. And if you can game, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has done that, like the gamified something with their pet on stream. If you do, I would love to know, because I want to be that person's best friend.
Yeah.
I also don't want to focus too much on streaming, because it is just one channel of many.
Yes.
Another cool thing you can do, and this is something that like I would be doing if, again, I weren't kind of burnt out on editing video, is you can record your live streams. And I mean, it's basically what's happening right here. This is a live stream and a podcast. And the term for that I've heard is turkey carving, where something you make for one channel can be reused for others. It might be a bit weird to turn my stream into a podcast, because I mean, the hacky streams, but like a video on demand of like, I was thinking of maybe one live coding project for my stream could be like, I build a system where if something cool or funny or whatever happens on my stream, like standout, I could press a button on my Stream Deck, or chat could type like exclamation mark or something, and then that way then I could develop a system to bring all of that into Adobe Premiere or whichever editing software, and have little like what are they called, like timeline markers.
Yeah.
And that could save a lot of time just sitting and listening to myself talk.
That would be brilliant. I'd love to be able to do that. But I've actually developed a bot that does something similar to that, but it's more archaic. So our bot, me and my friend started, we had a bot back in the IRC days, our gaming days, and whenever somebody said something that was funny, we had a bot that we could just type exclamation notes and then basically copy the line into it, and all it did was store it in a file. That was it. And we've actually recreated this bot for Discord, and that's what my bot's based on, this bot. So you can actually recall funny quotes with exclamation quote. It's not turned on right now, but it will be enabled in this channel forever and a day once it's going. That'll be just one of the features the bot does, but there's no reason that you couldn't do something very similar with video, and you couldn't have... It'd be a bit more complicated. Somehow clipping a file from Twitch, maybe automatically.
Yeah, but sure.
Yeah, that would make my life easier if I wanted to do post editing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's a cool thing about being a software developer is you have the skills to make that kind of stuff, assuming you have the time and inclination. And I love that. That's one of my favorite things about writing software. It just feels like a superpower.
It is.
It really does.
Automate all the things. That's the thing in it. I go to the nth degree. I am one of those people that will spend 3 days writing a script to do something that would have took me 2 minutes to do, but that means I can now reproduce that same action forever, and it just works. And there's a bit of maintenance involved, but it just generally works.
Yeah.
We had a comment in Twitch, and it was a little bit in chat. It was a little bit ago. I think you've responded to it actually, Nick. But Yusuf Code says. Yeah. He sees Twitch as a cool way to engage because it isn't that common from what he sees personally. So I'd like him to maybe expand on that a little bit further. What does he mean by personally? What's the same? Twitch is quite different from real life in my experience, at least. Anyway,
shout out to feature.chat.
Yes. Andy has been on the podcast a few times, and he told us about it. And I actually saw it on C# Fritz's stream for the first time a good while back now, and I was like, "How do you get that? How does that work? That's perfect for the podcast." And it is. So we talked a lot about Twitch. You've talked about communities as well. You talked about a number of communities that you've been involved in. Are those Have you seen those communities help you expose yourself out and get opportunities out of them, or have they been more about developing yourself to be able to expose yourself better?
Yes to both, very much so.
Okay, right.
It's what's an example? I don't know. Well, like the Indie Hall community that I mentioned earlier, I helped someone. I've been hanging out, again, in this era of perpetual lockdown. They're based in Philadelphia. I'm based in Maryland, but they've already had a strong online presence forever. And now that's just like increased tenfold. And that's given me a chance to, get closer to them because I would like to live in Philly, but don't have the means right now. So, that eventually led to one of the people that runs the place, who's at this point kind of like an old friend of mine. He commissioned me to build a whole stream setup for him, and that was really awesome. He was like, okay, well, where do I begin? I have no idea. And I was like, oh well, you need learn how to use OBS, you need these scenes, and he was like, is there someone who can, or could you think you could do something that just like, I don't have to think about the technical side? And it was awesome. So that actually led to some paid work that didn't involve any code, but I mean,
it could have done, and it might do in the future. It could, you could have to enhance his stream with plugins that might not be available, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, that's how I know about featured.chat. Before I discovered that, I was like, I may have to code something like that, which would make me a little nervous. But and that's the thing. Like, yeah.
That kind of stuff's my bread and butter. Using APIs, and making a bot is the same thing. Basically, all featured chat is a front end to a listener of some description that's sending data back and forth, and it's the same as connecting to your Arduino or your Raspberry Pi. You use some kind of layer or abstraction over the top of the hardware, whereas this is using a layer or abstraction over the top of Twitch. So it's a very similar kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yusuf has responded, by the way. He said, personally, as in, he doesn't often see people plugging their own Twitch streams, so that clears that up a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit of a new frontier on Twitch. Traditionally everyone thinks, oh, Twitch is for gaming. But more and more I'm seeing, first it was like a wave of creative stuff, and then it started to turn into like professional development stuff. Like I mentioned, the career coach I mentioned earlier is going to be starting streaming soon and talking about career development stuff on Twitch. There's a point I wanted to make adjacent to that, but I kind of forget what it was. Oh, yeah. Like I heard this somewhere on YouTube University, so to speak. But somebody said that, like, just because you don't know how to, or that is to say, if you have the ability to say, oh, I don't need to code this, we could just use featured.chat. And then the hiring manager might say, like, oh, interesting, we were thinking about using featured.chat, or like insert tool, framework, whatever of choice. And then it kind of puts you in the position of consultant there in your own job interview. Again, I can't take credit for that tip, but I do love it.
It does work. I've personally had a few gigs for consultancy for providing coaching and training to CTO level people. Mentoring developers, and then obviously there's been a few coding jobs as well. Nothing massively significant compared to my normal enterprise work, but it still starts the ball rolling, and it's a good way to do it, especially if you don't have the experience in the commercial world as well, because you're exposing yourself, because you're actually putting yourself out there, and you're making something different from the next post on LinkedIn or the next CV that comes into someone's inbox. It's a bit different. It's I suppose you can take the term actually exposing yourself in a few different ways, not just the what we intended it.
Not in a way that would violate Twitch terms of service.
No, not that way either. But more about you're actually exposing the fact that you're kind of human, the fact that you're capable of doing some of these things, or willing to learn, or the thing is, people can listen to us talk all day, and everybody will take something slightly different from it. And there could be a CTO of a company listening to us right now that looks at you, or listen to us in the future, because they said this is a podcast, and listens to what you're saying right now and goes, oh, right, well, we need somebody who's, we've actually got an idea about buttons that send messages to a dog feeding thing. I don't know, that's a daft example, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I have had comments like that before. Hey, what's up? Speaking of that, on that note, hey, how's it going, Zool? I have gotten, like, people had come in. That timing on that is so funny. It's like, who has said, like, oh, I might have an opportunity for you. So it's interesting. And again, that's a big part of what's exciting about pivoting to dev, so to speak, is that the market is pretty rad right now. And it's, like I said, I've done this kind of series building thing before, and it didn't take off anywhere close to as quickly as this. So it's very interesting to see that.
So when you say quickly, then how do you, what's the
not
scale?
at all. No, we're not speaking of you as a devil at all right now. It's just like interesting because it's one of those things where, because I'm a hobbyist pivoting to professional environment, situations, I don't know what I don't know. So one of the first comments I got, which like really kind of raised my hopes for the whole thing and really inspired me, was like, I think it was during a raid by like someone, people on live coder teams, was like, this guy could probably get a junior developer job now. Like, I framed it as, oh, it's this big journey I have to go on, but I didn't know that maybe I was much further ahead than I was. And I guess back to the main point of this podcast slash live stream is you'll never know that until you #expose yourself. Like that was a cool thing to learn. And so I guess
I think it can also help with your confidence as well. As you said, you're being it might go the other way. There's nothing saying it wouldn't go the other way as well, but I think if you take all comments, as they're given, and you don't read them negatively, and you try and see the positive in everything, there are going to be people who are giving you positive, constructive criticism, but you might not take it that way depending on your frame of mind at that moment in time. So, as long as you try and take all of that and work with it and build from it, and you're able, I know you've struggled with this, and I sometimes struggle with this as well on streams, and I know there's plenty of others that struggle with this. You take too much advice on board too early on and try and act on it all, especially when you're on stream. It sometimes puts you in a bit of a nosedive, a kerfuffle. You're not quite sure where you're heading. But being able to compartmentalize and be able to do the right things and take the right advice is important.
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned earlier being on the ADHD spectrum, very much so, but it's but again, to finding an outlet that feels, if not effortless, then fun, that you enjoy doing. That's awesome, because for me on Twitch, it's I can just let my brain's ADHD just shine, just go, make this party go. And it's and I personally love the streams that are just infinite tangents. Again, I'm thinking of Chef Brent's stream tech streams, where it's we're talking about the latest tech in streaming, and if somebody mentions something in chat, the whole stream can just go in that direction. An example is what's that?
I've done that a few times, especially with Tultepe comes on, because he generally engages with me quite a lot. He'll ask me a question, or he'll either ask me a question about what I'm doing, or he'll say something slightly to the side of it, and then I'll go, oh, actually, you know what? Let's open up a Visual Studio solution, and I'll start showing you how we can actually put this together. And that's what I love about streaming. It's that dynamic engagement, and you don't always get that.
Yeah, and it's it can lead to cool things in your own professional world too. With me loving to connect people, so to speak. One of my video producer friends, who is also pivoting to a different field, incidentally, was experimenting with using Paperspace virtual Windows machines to run OBS, which, by the way, it's awesome if you don't have a computer powerful enough on your own. And he shared that with Brent, who was so fascinated by it that now if I'm not mistaken, he is now running the entire virtual conference TV component on a Paperspace virtual machine. So nice. It's wow, that's full circle.
I've had so many suggestions for new tech and new things during streaming that I've just got a big list now, and it's another to-do list that I'll never get to. It's things like
mine's around here somewhere.
I've got Visual Studio Code's remote Docker containers that you can connect to from it. I've got that to look into in a lot of detail, because that sounds like that's going to save me so much time. But figuring how to fit that into my day job is another thing, or figuring how to fit it out into my streams is another thing entirely. There's loads of them, and and I do like the tangents as well. And
there's one more thing I definitely want to touch on. I guess since it's an hour, right?
Yeah, well, we've probably got a few minutes left before we go into the outros. So yes, let's keep going.
I definitely want to shout out Build a Portable Reputation. It's this. I don't know if I have a convenient way to paste this into chat because I'm on multiple computers, but it's this really cool article, and it was written by I met this person through one of those business circles.
Is it the one I have highlighted?
That's the one. Yep. And the point it raises is don't necessarily if you and almost kind of the point earlier about evangelizing just one thing. If you tie your reputation too strongly to like just one company or one tech stack or whatever, you stand a chance of getting burned on that. Because like if you lose that job, then you kind of lose, if you don't have anything outside the job, you stand to kind of lose a lot of that. And so I like the idea of like owning your platform. I praise Twitch a lot. But it is just a platform. It's my favorite streaming platform by far. So, I don't.
We've covered things like this before. I'm a contractor. I do lots of different types of work for lots of different types of people. Even one client, I will be doing multiple different things for at once. All under different statements of work. If I had stuck to my guns and stuck with one company for the 20 years that I've been working, I wouldn't know anywhere near as much as I know. My knowledge would not be as broad as it is. And as I said, I don't know everything, but I know a lot more than somebody who has maybe 30 or 40 years working for one company. They might have great domain knowledge about that company, but they don't have very wide knowledge really, unless they do things outside of their work on the wider world, on the wider world of software development. They might be still doing things in the one way. And I see it all the time when I work for companies. I see their way of coding is 20 years old and they haven't come forward with the times. And they blame time for it, but it's not that. It's that they don't expose themselves to, here we go with that word. They don't expose themselves to the wider world of development and the communities. Yeah. And if I wasn't on Twitch, I wouldn't know about a lot of things. That fair enough, I don't have loads of people that watch me, but the people who do talk do give me food for thought a lot of the time. And that's a key thing,
That's awesome. Good to hear, Zul. Another thing that is very important to point out for this, getting your stuff out there is this stuff takes time and effort. And it's like, that's the meaning behind stacking the bricks, is that like, this is like, if you zoom out 40,000 feet or whatever, like you could say this is me on one podcast, but like this could lead to me on another podcast, or maybe I find a thing for another person. And I love like making those connections, but it's just like, it takes time and patience. And like my stream has been doing surprising better than I thought it would. It's growing more quickly than I thought it would. However, that comes on the back of 10 years being a very serious hobbyist in this domain and 20 years as a video producer. So I know how to like.
And I have to say, like, having, I don't like the word, but it's the best word I can think of it. Having gimmicks on your stream, that helps massively. I would not have asked you to come on this podcast if I hadn't spent half an hour watching you that first time. Not even half an hour. If you weren't as interesting as you were for that short period of time, you didn't have hundreds of viewers like some of the bigger streamers. But that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in interesting people, and I'm interested in people with different stories to tell. And you have a different story, and that makes you unique. And that's what's what's key.
Yeah, and I think like for the gimmicks thing, I have a button, a folder on my Stream Deck called gimmicks, but it's like they're all just about like my personal brand. I mean, my flavor of being on the spectrum is like I've always had an obsession with. I mean, go figure. I've always been obsessed with like blinky things and theatrical things and dogs, and my brain just lights up with joy to make technology talk to other bits of technology. I love it, and it's just like. That's another good thing. Find your personal brand. Will be another pro tip for that. And just make it like your style. But of course, like also an important thing there is like, try not to make content just about you. Try to make it about us, the community, the people. Pivot to dev, for instance, like for now it's about me trying to get a software job. But once I do, I want to make, it's like a core value of mine to reach out to others who want to do the same thing. And I'd love to make it into like a, change away from the somewhat narcissistic, get me a job to get you a job.
Yeah.
that sort of a thing.
That's kind of what we
so-
do here a little bit. Me and Josie have been doing it a long time, and we try. I know I'm talking about myself a lot here, but I have to talk about my own experiences. There's not much
Right.
more I can relate to, really. But that's what we want to do, and that's why we have the tagline, the live knowledge repository for software professionals, because we want to help people who are wanting to get into the software industry at the same time as people who are already in the software industry and just need to know a little bit more, or want a bit of catharsis, and they want to join in with chat, and they want to have a good old whinge about something that they can relate to on the podcast. It helps us and it helps them, and it's a two-way thing. It's not all about us, it's not all about them, and that's a key thing.
That's what. It's not just about exposing yourself; it's about exposing others. That doesn't quite track, but
expose ourselves together.
Yes.
Right, so yes, before we get kicked off, it's the. Right, so is there any closing comments then? We are going to go into our outro now. We are slightly overdue. We should be okay though for time. Okay. Is there any closing comments then? Is there anything that you've missed that you want to get across?
Just that I feel like I'm lighting up neurons in my brain that haven't been touched for a long time. And remember these principles about be helpful if you see an opportunity. It doesn't always have to be an opportunity for you. It can be an opportunity for someone else. And maybe that actually could be a note to end on, is that it's not, exposing yourself is as much about helping others as it is about being all about you and how awesome you are.
Yeah.
It's like being a good human.
I think you can look at people who stream, or look at people who talk, expose themselves on social media a lot, influencers and people who, who take lots of photos of themselves. You can look at them as narcissistic. You can look at all of us who do this as vain in a way. But
yeah,
I also like to look at it. Yes, we are. We have to be. We have to have some kind of need for attention to do this. But at the same time, you can tell, especially when it's live and it's not just a picture you're looking at, but I think you can tell that somebody means well, that they want to help, that they want to get across the right level of love to the the community. And one of the things we formed DNI on, Josie and I, we have a set of ethics, a set of business related ethics, and also a set of community ethics, and they are very focused on everybody is level across the board. We all want to try and help everybody. We're not about laughing at somebody because they we're never going to laugh at somebody because they don't know what a function is, in a software program. We're never going to say, what do you mean you've never heard of CSS? It's not about that.
I wasn't born knowing what a function is.
Neither was I.
Maybe you could call it instead of malignant narcissism, maybe it's benevolent narcissism.
Oh, I suppose I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are at the end of the show. Before we finish the show, we have a section called Bring Your Own Manual, where we've already learned a lot today, but the Bring Your Own Manual is something that we used to call RTFM, which was a little bit more negative. It was a little bit more about, let's have a rant. Let's get the catharsis out of the way. But today, BYOM is about learning. So we want to know, Nick, if there's anything that you've learned in any subject. It doesn't have to be dev-related or related to the subject that we've talked about now. A fact or something cool that you've seen or learned over the last couple of weeks that you can share with people.
I guess the main thing that comes to mind is that project I just did for the Twilio Champion, the overlay project. It was I would, in the space of 2 weeks or so, kind of went from sort of knowing how Git/GitHub/development cycles work to actually doing it. And I learned that it's I guess the main thing I learned is that it comes surprisingly naturally to me. So that's, I guess, a good sign. I can't think of anything more novel though.
GitHub has a very specific development life cycle, and it's the enterprise world is actually taking, especially now Microsoft owns GitHub, is actually taking a lot from the from that world, from the GitHub open source community. You know, pull requests are a big thing now in enterprise dev, and they didn't used to be. I mean, they have been for a while, but they didn't used to be. You know, things like you know, using Git and using non-linear workflows, they weren't really a thing for a long time in software development, and it was always difficult to do that. But these days it's becoming more, it's actually difficult to teach older developers those kind of things. So yeah, that is an interesting thing that's coming in. The software delivery lifecycle has now kind of migrated into something called ALM, which is called the application lifecycle management. Which encompasses a lot more than just the software delivery lifecycle, which is things like planning and delivery and writing and maintenance of software. It also includes operations and monitoring and everything else that comes with it. So,
I think like the version control stuff has applications far beyond software.
Version control is a minefield. It's easy if you take Semver and you work with semantic versioning and you adopt it, but believe me, very few people actually use semantic versioning in the real enterprise world. They do in open source communities and libraries and things like that, but it's very difficult to get people to adopt it because they usually focus on what their customers expect and projects and delivery life cycles rather than software versions. And it's difficult to get them to think in another way. It's a language thing a lot of the time.
That's something I also learned about on this project. Like if the branch name has feature / in it, that triggers an auto deploy on Amplify.
Well, that's only because they've set that CI pipeline up. That isn't always the case.
Yeah. And Zul brings a good point up too.
He does, yes. I clicked the wrong one because he said something just after that. And some people still put their own spin on Semver. Yes, they do. But you can usually put your own spin on Semver while sticking to Semver by using Semver extensions, which is a little hyphen at the end of the semantic versioning number before the build number. But anyway,
yeah, feature / this feature is gonna be effing awesome.
Yep.
That's my personal spin.
Don't get me started on GitHub. Git commits and how. Traditionally, people make a commit to a code repository and they think that's it, it's done and dusted. But if you work in feature branches and you work in solitary feature branches in Git, for example, you can rewrite your history and rewrite your commits. And getting people to understand that and to make the main branch or the master branch or whatever you want to call it is that you can completely fashion that exactly as you need it to look or want it to look and make it easier to follow and read, and that commits are individual and not linear. It's very difficult to get that. But anyway, getting a bit deep into that.
Sounds fascinating.
It's
exciting.
It's what I'm working on stuff like that right now. Well, anyway, so my BYOB is actually about it's about the universe. Something about space, because I'm not that interested, but I don't know, every time I see something or watch something, or even I was up in the lakes in England. We've got an area called the Lakes, probably about the size of New York. It's it's not very big, but I went up there and it's really clear at night up there, and you can see the stars, and it just kind of sparked my imagination one night. I was out looking at them, and so I started reading and did the whole Wikipedia stuff where you start reading one thing and you click on the next thing and you go to that and you just end up down this rabbit hole. I had a little bit of a crisis, kind of a not midlife, but a little bit of an existential crisis about life and what it all means and stuff. So I was like, how long are humans going to last? Forget like nuclear wars, forget all of the terrible things that we're going to do to ourselves. How long is life?
I'll try.
Yeah, well, so I learned that no matter what we do to the planet, no matter how much we evolve and how well we treat it, in 600 million years, the sun is going to be giving off enough solar solar radiation, not flares, solar radiation, that our planet will not have enough CO2 on it anymore to produce plants so all life on the planet will end. So we've got 600 million years, everybody, basically. But don't worry about it.
Well, I mean,
COVID doesn't matter, any of that stuff.
Yes.
But it was an interesting fact.
About.
I learned a lot more facts about the universe. We actually started watching a program on Netflix called The Universe, surprisingly, as well, because I got so kind of engrossed in it and it bored the wife to death with it. But
it's funny, kind of on that note, to like be seeing this interesting success in my career path with a backdrop of everything being terrible. It's like almost an inverse correlation. But I guess, you know, in my vain attempt to have some beautiful final comment, I guess that does give you some perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
I mean,
I'm a downer.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky. Some people are struggling at the moment. Some people are losing the jobs, and you know, I feel for them. I'm on the other side of that fence. For some reason, the last couple of years, my my business has really taken off, and I'm being very lucky for that. Either that,
that's awesome.
Or exposing myself and being, doing this Twitch stuff and networking and everything else I do is working. And you can't. Thing is, you can't measure that. You can't measure what worked really well. You just have to keep trying and get to a point where you're making an impact and you're happy in yourself. And
you can measure some things, but like, ooh, we're getting a raid.
Oh, we're getting a raid. Well, that noob, we're just closing. Thank you very much, that noob. I hope you've had a good stream today. Unfortunately, we're in the middle of recording a podcast, so we are actually going to close the show now. I was going to raid you myself, actually, noob, because I noticed you were online. But anyway, so thank you very much, Nick, for being on the show. You now have an opportunity to, I know you've been doing it for most of the show, but you now have an opportunity to pimp yourself. If you've got any side projects you've got, tell people about your channel, anything like that. And it's now your turn.
Let's see. First of all, everyone should totally go follow me on twitch.tv/NicksMadScience. You get to interact with an awesome, cute, adorable, smart Labrador Retriever who I will now... Whoop! Hey, Mouse, come here. Your time is
a good name for a dog, that Mouse.
I know. He's my lab mouse. Get it, because he's a lab, and also... Mouse, come here. Might have disturbed him from a nap. But it's a coding and also dog interactivity stream. Here he is, man of the hour. And
beautiful.
Yeah, he's a very handsome puppy. Hey, woof, 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 woof. Nice. Good job. So yeah, come to my stream and play with the adorable puppy, and also learn about code. What else? I guess to your comment earlier about like something on GitHub I might want to share. I would eventually like to begin. So I'm writing all this code to like make my stream all interactive, but you know, like so many software projects and other projects, it's very like I wrote it for me and my stream, and I would not mind thoughts or suggestions or whatever on how I could make it into more of a usable like Twitch. I mean, the project that runs it is the main thing that runs it is called Twitch Raspberry Pi, which is not the most creative name, but I came up with it on the spot. I guess.
So do you know the URL off your hand so you can point people there? If not, we'll put it in the show notes. And
it's github.com/NicksMadScience/Twitch-Raspberry-Pi.
Excellent.
In fact, for the sake of convenience, I will type that for everyone.
Excellent. So we are now at the end of the show. Thank you very much to everybody in Twitch chat. Thank you very much for the raid, Noob. It is unfortunate that you've joined us right at the end of our 1 hour podcast, which we try and do every Thursday, but we haven't been doing for a while. Normally, this is we don't do the dev stream. This is we don't do the podcast. This is a dev stream, and usually I'm doing something with Angular or .NET Core or Docker or something like that. And finally, thank you very much, Nick. We will have you on again. We already talked about a subject potentially to have on before, and if
that's true.
If you'll come back, we'll have you back. You can visit our website on www.dnistream.live. It's all of our podcast discovery platforms are on there, all of our episodes. There's a contact form as well, which does work. It didn't work, and it's now working. I'm sorry about that if anyone did try and contact us on it. And
it happens.
Yeah, well, I've done that a few times, and somehow I broke it last time I did an update, but it's now fixed again. You can use the form to give us feedback on the show, to ask to become a guest. If you've got any comments or suggestions for the show, please do send us a message. And of course, please follow us on Twitch, which is down there. I don't know, whatever. If you're on a mobile device, it could be...
I think I'm closer to it.
Yeah. Over
Wait,
there,
no, wrong. No, that's the right side. Okay.
I don't even know. It's
if you're on
somewhere.
desktop.
Yeah.
Only if you're on desktop, though.
Only if you're in desktop. Otherwise, it's probably overlaid somewhere now. I don't know. They keep changing it, don't they? So yeah, thank you very much, and we do hope to have you again next Thursday
Absolutely.
at 7 o'clock. I do development streams as well on Mondays at the moment. I stopped doing my Wednesday streams, and all that's left is to say goodbye. So thanks, chat, and thanks, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Catch you later.
Bye.